Hello friends, Jeff here and welcome to Squadron, Facebook Live. Today we're going to talk a little bit about traveling. Now a couple of weeks ago, or actually a couple of months ago, I wrote an article about the importance of traveling and the importance of visiting battlefields or any place in history that has something to do with building a model. You know, we all know, especially the armor modelers, nothing is more invigorating than going to a place or a battlefield or an area where things actually happened, and try to incorporate that in your ideas or in your fantasies to build a diorama. And I was very fortunate living in Belgium, in Europe, most part of my life, my early life actually, that I had access to these places. There was a lot of, if I traveled in any direction, like half an hour, there was always something that was war-related, either from World War I and especially World War II. So most of my really interest today and back then was either the Battle of the Bulge, which was very accessible because that was only like an hour and a half from my house, or Normandy, and a little bit of the Eastern Front too, but that's a different story. But those two areas, those two battles, that really had a big impact on my, let's say, my modeling career and also the way I looked at things. So back then in the 70s, when I just got out of the army, I didn't have a lot of money, and coming out of the army, I just got married, and there was not a lot of funds to explore or to do stuff like that. I didn't even have a car coming out of the army, so I had to basically make sure I acquired all those things before I could do anything. And then there was also starting a family. So in my mind there was always this idea of going on a honeymoon, but basically going to a battlefield and doing the coast of Normandy. Now a couple of years later, when I got married, a couple of years later, my buddy, who I think I had one Facebook Live episode about that. He passed away about a couple of years ago, but he became my best friend, and both of us had the same ideas of visiting these battlefields. So long story short, we decided he was supposed to go on. He was supposed to go on a honeymoon, and we decided for both of us to basically go on a honeymoon together, both couples, and we decided to go to Normandy, to the coast of Normandy. So we rented a bed and breakfast in Saint-Lô, and for 2 weeks we actually explored the whole coast of Normandy. And for people that never been there, it's actually very, very interesting, because now a lot of the monuments, a lot of the equipment is being preserved. You know, the country, the government took over, and they made all these sites now accessible to the public. But way back in the 70s, late 70s, I'm talking about 78, 79, a lot of the stuff, either in the Ardennes or in Normandy, equipment was still where they left it. Most of them was scrapped, of course, but once in a while you were going down a country road and you looked and there was like a knocked out panther in a ditch. Or I remember even in the Ardennes there was like a jumbo, Sherman, like a jumbo in the middle of the field with the cows around, and it was still part of the way that people left it. Now also think about this, back in the 70s, people that went through the war, they were in their 50s, you know, they were in their mid-50s, maybe late 50s. Actually, they were younger than I am right now. So they were all sick and tired of the war, and they did not see the significance of keeping this history around. They just want to forget about it and move on with their lives. And that's why you could see a lot of bunkers or gun emplacements or fortifications still in a pasture with the cows in there doing their stuff. I mean, it was actually very funny, but still it gave you an extra sense of reality. Now, of course, since the 80s and 90s, things got a lot better, and the government in many cases took over and made these things, like I said, like a memorial, or preserve the ground so that the public could access it. Now I got the story actually, and sometimes you come to these little towns that nobody knows about, and you're just touring little side roads and the dirt roads, and I remember me and my friend actually, we had a magazine where we had a subscription. Actually, the magazine just started. It was After the Battle, Then and Now, and I'm sure a lot of the older school guys, they will remember that magazine. I don't know if it's still out or not, but back then there was like After the Battle, Then and Now. So it all handled about battlefields that they post pictures, wartime pictures, and then they also went to the same battlefield and tried to match the current day picture with the old battlefield pictures. So the first issue was about D-Day. It was about the D-Day invasion, and I got my hands on one of those magazines. That they were like, I think they were like a British publication, and I went through this magazine so many times that at the end it was just all in shreds. But that magazine I used as a template, or at least a guideline, to explore the coast of Normandy. And in one of the battles, the very first battle, the very first attack on D-Day happened actually on June the 5th at 11:45 p.m. and it happened in Bénouville. Now, if you're a little bit, what's the word? Know about history and know about the history of D-Day, then the 6th Airborne Division, the 6th British Airborne Division, they were tasked to secure the bridges over the Caen Canal and the Orne Canal. So those two bridges, they were very important to keep intact. So whenever the next morning the invasion came from the sea, that they were able to cross those bridges. So those bridges, they had to be absolutely kept intact, and that's why the British Airborne Division, they jumped, and they also landed their Horsa gliders just to basically attack these bridges and keep them intact. Now, there is one very famous bridge, and it's called the Pegasus Bridge, or Pegasus. I don't know how to say it correctly, but it's the Pegasus Bridge. And back then it was called the Bénouville Bridge. Now, like I said, this was the first attack that happened on D-Day, the night before the invasion. So we, of course, that little town, Bénouville, close to Ranville, Bénouville was on our traveling path. You know, we just wanted to see that bridge because the bridge was still there. Now, when we got there, like I said, we were like two couples, and we walked around there. Again, we had access to almost everything. We could just crawl around there, but also there was a small cafe. Now, the cafe was there during World War II too. So they had this little hole in the wall. It was like, I think if I remember, it's like 5 tables and a couple chairs, and that was it, a small bar. But the cafe was still in business, and it was still operated by the same people. Now, at the time I didn't know this. So finally we walked around a little bit, and we started to feel like we were like hungry. So we said, well, the best place to go is in that little cafe. It was called the Cafe Condrey. I remember that, the Cafe Condrey. And so we decided to have like basically a little snack. Like the French were, of course, very renowned for their little rolls with the lettuce and the ham and the cheese and the mayonnaise. So it was the perfect spot. There was nobody around, no tourists, no nothing. It was the perfect time, perfect spot to have something and to basically nourish our stomach. So we get in there, and when we walked in there was this, like I said, it was a very small cafe, you know, and when we walked in there was a small bar, like it was maybe 3-4 feet wide, and behind the bar there was an elderly woman, and she was talking to a neighbor. She was yapping in French. So I get in there and I said, bonjour madame, comment allez-vous? Ah oui monsieur, comment allez-vous? Ça va? Est-ce que c'est possible pour manger quelque chose? We want to eat something. Ah oui, oui, j'arrive tout de suite. Asseyez-vous. So take a seat. I'll be right there. Okay. So we started chit-chatting in Flemish, in our language, which is a dialect from Dutch. And we were talking and going over the menu and all that kind of stuff. So after 3-4 minutes, now remember there was nobody else in that cafe, just a lady talking to the neighbor. So after 3-4 minutes, nobody was coming over to the table and to service. So I said, pardon madame, service s'il vous plaît, nous avons faim. Like we're hungry, and I made a little joke about it. So she looked in my direction and she said, oui, oui, j'arrive tout de suite. I'll be right there. So, okay, all right. So another minute goes by, 2 minutes goes by, 3 minutes, 5 minutes goes by, and then I finally said, madame, s'il vous plaît, on a ici déjà pendant 15 minutes. We were here like 15 minutes. And she said, oui, j'arrive, but I could feel that something was going on. So I thought, what the hell did I do to piss her off? Because apparently she's not coming over. So I talked to my friend and said, I don't think we're going to get anything out of here. So finally my friend said, all right, let's pack up and leave because this is not going anywhere and we're hungry, let's go somewhere else. So we get up from behind the table, walk through the door, and then she comes around the bar and she said, oh, mes amis, je suis désolé, je m'excuse. Like, she was like, she felt so bad, like blah, blah, blah. Well, basically she said it very sarcastic, like, oh, boo-hoo, your little, whatever, is little feelings hurt. So we left. So at the parking lot, I said, what the heck was that, Now, it was only until 10-15 years later that I finally realized what happened. Now, going back to the war, Madame Condrey, so the proprietor, she and her husband occupied that cafe. They were the proprietors of the small cafe in that little town. Now, because of the importance of the bridge, a German garrison was stationed there, so they had to protect the bridge. They had I think it was like a Pack 40, a stationary Pack 40 there, like a gun emplacement. But there was a whole garrison that had to protect that bridge. Now, if you're also familiar with a little bit of geography, Madame Condrey, she was born in the Alsace. Now, the Alsace is basically part of France, but it butts up, it borders Germany, and during World War II, the Germans actually took that area and incorporated back into the German Reich. Now, of course, when they lost the war, they had to give it back to France. World War II, what happened? They took it back. Now, half of those people in the Alsace area were German-minded, the other half were French patriots, and there was not any love lost between those two. Now, Madame Condrey, she spoke fluent German. She was bilingual. She was French, of course, but she also spoke fluently German. But she never revealed this to the Germans when they visited her cafe and she had to basically serve them. She never revealed to them that she could understand the German language. So, long story short, she was eavesdropping. So after hours, when the Germans came in and they had a drink or they had to eat something, they were talking amongst each other, and they thought, well, there is this madame, she doesn't understand German, so we can say whatever we want. So they revealed a lot of little secrets, about where the next gun position was going to be, changing of the guard, movement of divisions, movement of the latest news. So Madame Condrey just listened to everybody and while smiling, And if you're not familiar with that kind of thing, look for Allo Allo, the British. It's a comedy. It's a sitcom. It's a comedy from World War II, but it's Allo Allo. It's actually hilarious. But that's actually what happened in that little cafe. So at the end of the day, she got all the information and she talked to her husband. Now her husband, he was also French, of course, but he was also fluently in English because he used to work for a bank and he had some international connections back then before the war. So he was very fluent in English. So what did he do? After the day went by, He got on his bike, pedaled about probably about half a mile, and there was, I don't remember correctly, but I think it was like some sort of an insane asylum or a sanatorium, but it was a hospital, and in the hospital was also in connection with the Maquis, the Finnish Mankey, which is the underground, the resistance, and they had a radio, and they were able to transmit everything that they know from that little cafe over to England. So even on the eve of D-Day, basically half an hour before all the planes left, all the gliders left, they already were able to basically give them the latest news, what happened, and all the positions that were current there happening with that German garrison. So the Ox and Bucks regiment, the Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire regiment, who were supposed to land there with their gliders, they were absolutely so well informed that they basically landed on top of the bridge. You know, if you look at wartime pictures, you can see that one of them almost touched the bridge in a way. So they were very successful in taking the Germans by surprise around midnight when everybody was asleep. And they only had one casualty. One lieutenant got killed when taking the bridge, but they knocked out the whole garrison. They were able to, of course, eliminate a lot of Germans, but also they were, I think the battle was over like in 20 minutes, and they had the whole bridge for themselves, and they just had to wait for reinforcement coming from the sea. Now, coming back to the story with Madame Condrey, is she hated the Germans so much. She really hated the Germans until her dying breath. I think she died in, if I'm not mistaken, I think she died in 1985, 1986. But she hated the Germans with such a vengeance that it made her physically ill. So what happened is, when we came in that little cafe, we started speaking, after we talked to her in French, we started speaking a little bit, we started conversating in our own language, which is a dialect. Now Flemish, if you will, if you're familiar with that, or at least know where I come from, it's a Germanic language. It has like a Germanic tone. So what she was thinking is that we were like basically were German tourists having a good time, and she refused to serve us. So if I would have known that then, that would have made me maybe a lot more. I could have said something. I said, we are not German, we are Belgium, we're just here. Our parents suffered the same way that you did. But no, without any reason, she basically sat there and refused to come to our table. But coming back to the whole thing, sometimes when you travel and you get into these little places, you never know who you encounter. And it fascinated me, that little story, I mean the whole little thing that happened in Benouville, really fascinated me. And I went back there ever since. I didn't see the lady anymore, because by the time I got back for the second time, she already passed away. Now her daughter took over that little cafe, and it's still there. They never painted the walls on the inside. They left the how do you say, paraphernalia on the walls. It's still, and every year, of course now it's going to be less and less, but as of the war, as of I think it started in 1948, every year those veterans that took the bridge came back every year. And I was very fortunate when I went back in 2004, I think it was like the 60th anniversary, if I'm not mistaken. I was very fortunate to meet a lot of the survivors, and I was very fortunate to actually talk to them and be on the picture then. One guy, actually, I don't know if I already told you this, but I have, or I own a little World War II museum in Rollsburg, West Virginia. You should look it up. It's called the Greatest Generation Society Museum. I operate that with my ex. Well, actually not operate, my collection is there and the town operates that. So, but one of the uniforms is from the Ox and Bucks regiment. And when I talked in 2004, when I talked to one of these people, one of the veterans, he said that he would, he had his uniform still, and he said that he would send it to me. Now, I don't know if this is the uniform that he wore on that particular day, but lo and behold, almost 6-8 months later, a box arrived, and there was this uniform, and I had that uniform on display. So okay, it says move on a little bit. So during the same trip, I think we went to Sam Glees, the same thing, very familiar. And if you really, we talked about this with Richard last week, The Longest Day is one of my favorite movies because it was actually shot on location. Now Sam Glees still today, looks the same like it was in World War II, because the town was not demolished. There was a couple buildings that burned out because of, they say that there was some flares that came down and started like a fire in a building. But St. Mary-Glise is still the way that it was like 75 years ago. And I think now the people more and more so that live there try to keep it as a tourist attraction. But anyway, in 79, it was just another town that went on with their business. There was no special, no special tourism kind of attraction. It was just a small town that was on the map. So we got there on a different day, and all of a sudden, I don't know, my ex-wife back then, she basically got some sort of an anxiety attack. It was already 5 or 6 o'clock at night, and we were ready to either go back to the hotel or eat something, but all of a sudden in the middle of St. Mary-Glise, she gets this panic attack and starts sweating and started losing. It looked like she was chased by rats for a mile. I mean, her eyes were like wide open, and she really, I mean, she fell apart right there. So she placed herself on the curb of the sidewalk, and there I am, you know, not knowing what to do. What am I going to do this? Because this was like a complete meltdown. So my friend came over and said, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, you know, I don't know. You go back to the hotel and I'll see you later. I'm just going to take care of business here because I have to at least make sure she gets some sort of help or whatever. So, but yeah, I was there in a small town. I didn't know who was who and where was what. So I looked behind me, and there was this little grocery store, another little hole in the wall. So I go in there and said, "Pardon, monsieur, il y a un docteur dans la ville." Asking for a doctor, and he said, "Well," I couldn't already understand him because his dialect was so hard that it was for me hard to understand. And so he comes outside, and he made some gestures with his arms that I had to take a left, and then the third house on the right, that was where the doctor lived. So, okay. So, okay, I picked my ex-wife up, and we tried to struggle through the town until, like I said, there was a plaque, Dr. Renault. Okay. Now, it's not like over here where there's like a little emergency clinic. No, this was actually a row house. Like a house in a row, and they had a little, I remember there was a little front yard, and I had to open a metal gate and walk in, and then go to the door and ring the bell. So I ring the bell, and I'm standing here trying to keep her straight, and so the door opens, and here I remember, I mean, it's funny, but this is what I remember. I mean, I expected some French woman, you know, not all that great looking, not all that, you know, like a peasant kind of a deal. And here is this beautiful woman, this beautiful, sophisticated woman that opens the door, and she asks, what can I do for you? So I tried to explain a little bit the problems that we have. So she said, okay, I'll get the doctor, and we'll take care of it. So we go in, and the doctor comes out, a very nice man, and he said, je m'appelle Dr. Renault, comment allez-vous? Oh, okay, that's all fine and dandy. So he talks to my wife a little bit. Of course, he didn't understand any languages, so I had to translate this. And finally he said, well, she's basically a nervous breakdown. I'm going to give her a little shot of Valium. So, okay, go ahead. So he gave her a shot of Valium to calm her down, and then he put her on a couch. But he had to wait before he could let us go. He said, let that thing work. And then finally, when she's able, you can guide her to your car, and then you can take off into the hotel. And of course, take care of her, because she's not going to be probably be able to walk for maybe 1 or 2 days, that she's just gonna sleep it off. So in my mind, I thought, okay, that will work for me, because once I tuck her in, I can do whatever I want and go to the place, because she was not really interested in looking at war monuments. So in a way, it's certainly that I say this, but at the end it worked out for me. Anyway, long story short, when she was sitting there, I was talking to this doctor. Now, what I didn't know, his father was the mayor of Saint-Mary-Glise during D-Day. So I had a conversation for almost an hour with this man that was a kid. I mean, he was like, I think he was like 14 at the time when this all went through. So now he was like in his early 50s. But I had this conversation with him about his father, what happened, how the Germans came to their house, how they had to help out, the first paratroopers came in. And that was absolutely fascinating to talk with this man, who I would never, ever had encountered. So you see, the morale of the story is traveling is very important. It is very important for everybody. I mean, if you really love your hobby so much and that you're really into this, into a subject or into a project or something, it's always better if you have the possibility to go to these places and soak it all up, because at the end it tells you, of course, a lot of the history, but also it gives you a better perspective of how you're going to build things, how you see this. You can soak up the environment, so you already have a pretty good picture of what it's all about. So, and that's what I try to do now too. Even here, there's a lot of I'm also interested in the Civil War or anything else. So, plus I like to ride my motorcycle. So it's raining today, so I couldn't bring it. But that's another thing I like to do. I like to go out and see battlegrounds where history happened, and I like to do it, in my case, of course, on a motorcycle. And if not, yeah, then you'll take the car. But again, it's very, very important to basically go out there and see it in real yourself. So, I thought I was talking for 10 minutes. So anyway, talking about long enough. There's a couple things I would like to mention. We have a couple things going on. Today also, of course, I would like to extend my greetings or celebrate the Vietnam veterans. I mean, I think today is the day that we recognize Vietnam veterans. So all you guys that served in Vietnam, hey, I respect what you did out there, and in name of all Squadron here, we appreciate your service. So thank you very much. Then on the other hand, we have also an action going on. It's free shipping today. Any purchase over $50 gets free shipping. So if you spend $50 or more, you get free shipping. And then over the weekend, we have another sale, 20% extra off on your cart, on your entire cart. So if you buy something, it's a 20% discount on the entire cart. And then also, last week we talked a little bit about our friend Fritz Swanson. Fritz is still, I got an email this morning from Gwen that she reached out to his wife. And from what I understand, he's still in critical condition. It's all about waiting for certain results. There's some, I think he has some bacteriological, if I say the word right, ammonia kind of a deal. So it's not really all that great. They said that they took him out of sedation, I think, if I read that right. But still, please keep him in your prayers, because Fritz is one of the greatest person I ever met. He's a great guy, and I hope he will have a full recovery. And Fritz, if you see this, hang in there, my buddy, my friend. Everything will be fine, and we'll see each other soon. So that's about it for today, except of course for the raffle, and I have to do this by myself because we got some stuff going on here. So last week's raffle, we were raffling this off, this Panzer IV Ausführung C. So we're gonna raffle that off and see if I can not look in there. Okay. And the winner is Gilbert Gordon. Gilbert, if you're watching this, please, you know the drill. Please reach out to our customer service or send us an email through the help desk, and we'll get this Panzer IV out to you as soon as possible. For the next raffle next week, we're gonna raffle the Shermanov, the Thunderbolt from Dragon again. So anybody who leaves a comment in the comment section, either on YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, please leave a comment, and you'll be eligible to enter your name in the bag and win this beautiful kit. Other than that, again, it's the same thing. We all know what's going on these days, so it's pretty depressing. But I have a good feeling we'll get through this. So be safe out there. Take all the precautions that you need. Stay home. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. I just did it. And everything will be over soon. So as for now, I'll see you guys next week at 12 o'clock Central Time. Jeff V here, signing off. And on top of that, this is a bonus. I have to push the button to turn it off. So I'll see you.